My dad said I'd never be tough enough to run the family business while my golden sister was the real deal. So I started a competitor and crushed them. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. I've been lurking on Reddit for years reading stories like this, never thinking I'd have one to share. But after what went down last month, I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating me alive. 34 female. And this whole mess started way back when I was a kid, but really exploded about 2 years ago. To understand why everything that happened was so satisfying, you need the full background on my family's toxic dynamics. My dad, Frank, 62, owned a mid-sized construction company called Morrison and Sons. He started it from nothing back in the 80s. Built it up to about 50 employees doing commercial and residential work across 3 counties. Growing up, that company was basically our religion. Every dinner conversation was about jobs, contracts, which crews were performing, which suppliers were giving us the best deals. The Morrison and Sons part was supposed to be me and my younger sister Kate, 29 female. Dad made that clear from the time we could walk. "Someday you girls are going to take over this empire I built," he'd say, usually while looking at blueprints spread across our kitchen table. "Morrison and Sons is going to be your legacy." But here's where it gets up. From early on, Dad decided Kate was the real construction worker, and I was just some kind of liability he'd have to deal with. Kate was one of those kids who seemed naturally good at everything physical. Star athlete in high school, could fix engines by the time she was 14. Had this easy confidence that made people want to follow her. Dad ate that up. "Look at Kate," he'd brag to anyone who'd listen. "Kid's got natural leadership, born for this business." Meanwhile, I was the one actually paying attention in school, learning about business management, studying cost estimation, getting certified in project management software. I'd spend summers working on Dad's job sites. But instead of getting praised for understanding the technical side, I'd get lectured about not being hands-on enough. The breaking point came when I was 19 and suggested Dad should computerize the business operations. This was 2009, and he was still doing everything on paper. Estimates, scheduling, payroll, inventory. It was a nightmare. I'd found this construction management software that could streamline everything, save money, reduce errors. Dad's response: "Real construction workers don't need computers, daughter. We build things with our hands, not by staring at screens all day." Kate, who was 14 at the time and barely knew which end of a hammer to hold, nodded along like she understood anything about running a business. "Yeah, Clara, construction is about getting dirty, not playing with gadgets." That became the theme of my entire life. Every time I tried to bring modern business practices to the company, I was told I was overthinking things or trying to make everything too complicated. When I got my business degree, Dad actually said, "College is fine, daughter, but this is the real world. You can't learn construction from a textbook." Kate, meanwhile, dropped out of community college after 1 semester because school wasn't for her. Dad's reaction? "Good for you, daughter. Real leaders learn by doing." I kept working for Dad through college and after graduation, thinking eventually he'd see that I understood the business side better than anyone. I reorganized our filing systems, created proper job costing procedures, even designed a basic database to track equipment maintenance. All without being asked, all on my own time. But every family gathering, every company barbecue, every meeting with suppliers, the story was the same. Kate was the golden child who really got the construction business. And I was just Clara, the girl who was good with paperwork. The favoritism was insane. Kate would show up late to job sites, spend half the day on her phone, leave early for whatever party or date she had planned. Dad would just chuckle and say, "Girls will be girls." I'd work 60-hour weeks, solve logistical problems, negotiate better material costs, and get a nod at best. When Kate turned 21, Dad started talking about succession planning. Not to me, mind you. I found out about these conversations from overhearing Mom talking to her sister on the phone. Apparently, Dad was already planning to transition more responsibility to Kate, despite the fact that Kate had never managed anything more complex than a 7-woman framing crew. I tried talking to Dad about it directly. This was about 3 years ago, when I was 31 and had been working in the business for over a decade. I'd just successfully managed our biggest commercial contract ever, a $2.3 million office complex that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Dad, I said after work one day, I think we should talk about the future of the company. I've got ideas about expansion, maybe getting into some specialty niches. I've been researching. He cut me off. Clara, you do good work. Don't get me wrong, but running this company takes a different kind of person than you are. I was stunned. What do you mean? Construction is a tough business. You need someone who can command respect from the crews, someone who understands what it means to get her hands dirty. Kate's got that natural authority. People follow her. Dad, I've been working on sites since I was 16. I know every aspect of this business. Knowing and leading are different things, daughter. Kate's got what it takes to be the boss. You're more of a support person. There's nothing wrong with that. Every good leader needs someone to handle the details. That conversation haunted me for months. Support person. After everything I'd contributed, all the improvements I'd made, all the money I'd saved the company, I was just the support person. But the real kick in the teeth came 2 years ago at Dad's 60th birthday party. He'd rented out the back room at this steakhouse, invited the whole extended family, key employees, some of our biggest clients. I thought it was just a birthday celebration. I was wrong. About halfway through dinner, Dad stood up and tapped his glass. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Turning 60 has got me thinking about the future, about legacy, about what kind of company I want to leave behind. My stomach started churning. I could see where this was going. Morrison and Sons has been my life's work, Dad continued, but a person's got to know when it's time to pass the torch. That's why I'm proud to announce that Kate Morrison will be taking over as president of Morrison and Sons, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. Kate stood up, grinning like she just won the lottery, and hugged Dad. Mom was crying happy tears. I just sat there watching my entire future get handed to my little sister in front of 40 people. Kate gave this speech about carrying on the Morrison legacy and bringing the company into the future with traditional values. It was complete. The girl couldn't tell you the difference between gross margin and markup if her life depended on it, but everyone ate it up. After the crowd died down, I cornered Dad in the parking lot. "What the hell was that?" I asked. "You didn't even discuss this with me. I've been working for this company for 15 years. Dad sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Clara, I told you. Kate's the right one for this job. She's got the personality for it, the leadership skills. Construction crews need someone they respect." "Respect, Dad? Half our guys have been asking me for technical guidance since they started. I'm the one who—" "You're good at the technical stuff. I've never said you weren't. But running a construction company isn't about spreadsheets and computers. It's about being tough, making hard decisions, commanding respect. Kate's got that natural authority." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Natural authority? Kate's never managed a budget over $50,000. She doesn't know our insurance requirements. She's never dealt with permitting issues. She couldn't read a complex blueprint if you gave her a week. Dad's face hardened. "Daughter, I'm going to say this once. Kate is the future of this company because she's tough enough to handle it. Some people are born leaders, and some people are born followers. There's no shame in knowing which one you are." That's when he said the words that changed everything. "You've never been tough enough to run this business, Clara. You're too soft, too academic, too worried about everybody's feelings. Kate's got the guts to make the tough calls. That's what it takes." I stood there in that parking lot watching my dad walk away from me like I was just some disappointed employee instead of his daughter. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If I wasn't tough enough to run Morrison and Sons, I'd show him what kind of woman I really was by building something better. The next morning, I walked into Dad's office and quit. "You're making a mistake, daughter," he said, not even looking up from his paperwork. "Where are you going to go? You've never worked anywhere else." I just smiled. "Don't worry about me, Dad. I'll figure it out." What Dad didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that I'd been quietly preparing for this possibility for months. All those evenings I spent working late at the office, I'd been documenting everything: client lists, supplier relationships, pricing strategies, project methodologies. I'd been building a complete picture of how Morrison and Sons operated, what our competitive advantages were, and more importantly, where our weaknesses were. I'd also been networking. Construction is a relationship business, and over 15 years, I'd built solid connections with subcontractors, suppliers, and even some clients. People knew my work, respected my attention to detail, and trusted my word. Dad always thought Kate's backslapping personality was what mattered, But in reality, most of our repeat business came from clients who knew I'd personally oversee their projects. Within a week of quitting, I'd filed the paperwork to incorporate Pinnacle Construction Solutions. I chose the name carefully, Pinnacle, suggesting we were the peak of quality and professionalism. Construction Solutions, emphasizing that we solve problems rather than just throwing muscle at them. I started small, used my savings to rent a tiny office space in a business park across town, bought some basic equipment, hired 2 people I'd worked with at Morrison & Sons who were tired of Kate's management style. My first contract was a small residential renovation, a $15,000 job that I could handle mostly myself, but I had bigger plans. See, one of Morrison & Sons' biggest weaknesses was technology adoption. Dad's insistence on doing everything the old way meant they were incredibly inefficient compared to what was possible. I'd spent years watching us lose money on projects because of poor scheduling, inadequate cost tracking, and communication failures between office and field teams. So I invested heavily in construction management software, project tracking systems, and mobile technology for field crews. While Morrison & Sons was still using paper timesheets and handwritten change orders, my guys had tablets that could access blueprints, submit daily reports, track material usage, and communicate instantly with the office. The efficiency gains were incredible. I could bid jobs more accurately because I had real-time cost data. I could catch problems before they became expensive disasters because of better communication systems. I could schedule more efficiently because I actually knew where my crews were and what they were working on. More importantly, I could prove to clients exactly what they were paying for. While Morrison & Sons still gave rough estimates based on experience, I could provide detailed breakdowns showing exactly how their money would be spent. My second job was a $40,000 kitchen renovation, then a $75,000 bathroom remodel. Word started spreading about this new construction company that actually finished projects on time and on budget. I also focused on the commercial market that Dad had always struggled with. He was great at residential work and small commercial jobs, but anything requiring complex coordination or strict compliance with regulations made him nervous. I positioned Pinnacle as the company that could handle the complicated stuff: medical facilities, educational buildings, anything requiring specialized knowledge. 6 months after starting Pinnacle, I landed my first big commercial contract, a $400,000 renovation of a medical office building. It was exactly the kind of job Morrison & Sons would struggle with. Lots of regulatory requirements, tight deadlines, zero tolerance for mistakes. I crushed it. Finished 2 weeks early, came in 8% under budget, and the client was so happy they immediately hired me for their next location. During this time, I barely spoke to my family. Dad would occasionally call, asking when I was going to come to my senses and return to the family business. Kate never called at all. Too busy playing CEO, I guess. Mom would try to guilt me into coming to family dinners. "Your father misses you," she'd say. "This whole thing is just pride. You girls should work together." But I wasn't interested in working together anymore. I was interested in proving a point. The breakthrough came about 18 months after I started Pinnacle. I'd been building relationships with general contractors who handled major commercial projects, positioning myself as a reliable subcontractor for specialty work. One of them approached me about a massive project, a $2.8 million renovation of a corporate headquarters downtown. It was exactly the kind of job Morrison & Sons had always wanted, but never been qualified to handle. Complex mechanical systems, high-end finishes, impossible deadline, client who demanded perfection. I spent 3 weeks putting together my bid, cost estimates down to the penny, detailed project timeline, comprehensive quality control procedures, references from every major job I'd completed. When I submitted it, I knew it was perfect. I got the job. More importantly, I beat Morrison & Sons' bid by $200,000 while promising a faster completion time. The general contractor told me later that Morrison & Sons' proposal looked amateur compared to mine. "Your documentation was incredible," he said. "Their bid was basically a number on a napkin with a handshake." That's when I knew I had Dad exactly where I wanted him. The downtown headquarters project made my reputation. Not only did I complete it perfectly, but I brought it in ahead of schedule and under budget. The client was so impressed they hired me for 2 more locations. The general contractor started referring me for other major projects. Within 6 months of completing that job, Pinnacle Construction Solutions had 15 employees and $8 million in contracted work. Meanwhile, Morrison & Sons was struggling. I wasn't directly competing with them. I was going after bigger, more complex projects that they couldn't handle anyway. But my success was starting to affect their reputation by comparison. Potential clients would say things like, "We heard about this new company, Pinnacle Construction Solutions. They did that amazing headquarters renovation downtown. We're thinking of going with them instead." Contractors who used to subcontract with Morrison & Sons started choosing my company for specialized work. Suppliers began offering me better terms because my payment schedule was more reliable and my volume was growing faster. But the real blow came when I started targeting Morrison & Sons' core clients directly. I'd spent 15 years building relationships with their customers. I knew exactly what they valued, what frustrated them about working with Morrison & Sons, and what they'd pay extra for. I crafted proposals that addressed every one of those pain points. Thompson Industries had been working with Morrison & Sons for 8 years. They did about $300,000 worth of facility maintenance and renovation work annually, bread and butter business that Dad counted on. I scheduled a meeting with their facilities manager, someone I'd worked with dozens of times when I was at Morrison & Sons. "Clara," he said when I walked into his office, "I heard you started your own company. How's that going?" "Really well," I said. "Actually, that's why I'm here. I know you've been happy with Morrison & Sons, but I wanted to show you what we could do differently." I presented a comprehensive facility management proposal that was unlike anything Morrison & Sons had ever offered. Instead of just responding to problems as they came up, I proposed a proactive maintenance system with predictive scheduling, detailed reporting, and guaranteed response times. More importantly, I offered to do it for 15% less than what they were currently paying Morrison & Sons while providing better service. "This is impressive," the facilities manager said, flipping through my presentation. "Morrison & Sons never offered anything like this level of documentation and planning." "We're not Morrison & Sons," I replied. "We're focused on solving problems, not just throwing labor at them." 2 weeks later, Thompson Industries canceled their contract with Morrison & Sons and signed with Pinnacle. That was just the beginning. Over the next 8 months, I systematically went after every major Morrison & Sons client. I didn't compete on price alone. I competed on value, offering services that Morrison & Sons couldn't or wouldn't provide. Advanced project management software that let clients track progress in real time. Detailed cost reporting that showed exactly how their money was being spent. Guaranteed completion dates with penalty clauses if we ran late. Quality assurance procedures that prevented the kind of costly mistakes that had plagued some of Morrison & Sons' recent projects. One by one, Morrison & Sons' biggest clients switched to Pinnacle Construction Solutions. Riverside Manufacturing, $500,000 annually, gone. Central Medical Group, $400,000 annually, gone. Brookstone Property Management, $600,000 annually, gone. Each time a client switched, I made sure to send a polite thank you note to Dad, letting him know I'd be taking excellent care of our mutual associates. The calls from Mom started getting more frequent. "Your father is worried about the business," she'd say. "Some of his oldest clients have left. He thinks there might be someone spreading rumors about the company." I never told him it was me. I figured he'd figure it out eventually. He did. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was in my office, a real office now, 3,000 square feet with a conference room and space for 20 employees. When my receptionist buzzed me, she said, "Clara, there's a Frank Morrison here to see you. He says he's your father." I smiled. "Send him back." Dad walked into my office looking like he'd aged 5 years in the two since I'd left Morrison & Sons. His face was red, his hands were shaking slightly, and he had that look he used to get when a job went seriously wrong. "You little," he spat before he was even fully through the door. "Nice to see you too, Dad. Please have a seat." He didn't sit down. Instead, he stood in front of my desk, looking around at my office like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Thompson Industries, Riverside Manufacturing, Central Medical. You've been stealing my clients." "I haven't stolen anyone," I said calmly. "I've been offering better service at competitive prices. Last I checked, that's called business." "Business? This is sabotage. You're trying to destroy everything I built." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "I'm not trying to destroy anything, Dad. I'm just showing the market what real construction management looks like." His face got redder. Real construction management? You think you know something about construction that I don't? I know a lot of things about construction that you don't. I know how to use technology to improve efficiency. I know how to provide clients with detailed reporting and transparency. I know how to complete projects on time and on budget, consistently. And I suppose Kate doesn't know any of that. I smiled. How is Kate doing, by the way? I heard Morrison and Sons lost the Riverside manufacturing contract. That's gotta hurt. Dad's jaw clenched. We're doing fine. Are you? Because from what I hear, you've lost about $2 million in annual revenue over the past 8 months. That's got to be putting some pressure on cash flow. The truth was, I knew exactly how Morrison and Sons was doing financially. Construction is a small industry in our area, and word gets around. Dad was struggling to make payroll, had laid off 6 employees, and was behind on payments to several suppliers. You planned this, Dad said, his voice quieter now. This whole thing, you planned to destroy my company. I plan to build a better company, I corrected. If that happens to put pressure on Morrison and Sons, well, that's the free market at work. Dad slumped into the chair across from my desk. For the first time since he'd walked in, he looked defeated instead of angry. Why? He asked. I gave you a job, taught you the business, treated you like family. Treated me like family? I laughed. Dad, you told me I wasn't tough enough to run the business. You gave everything to Kate without even considering what I'd contributed. You made it clear that in your eyes, I'd never be anything more than a support person. I was trying to be realistic about your strengths and weaknesses. No, I said, standing up and walking around my desk. You were playing favorites, just like you always did. Kate was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the disappointing daughter who didn't measure up to your idea of what a leader should be. I gestured around my office. Well, this is what your not tough enough daughter built. Pinnacle Construction Solutions did $12 million in revenue last year. We're on track for $18 million this year. We employ 28 people, and every single one of them makes more money than they would at Morrison and Sons. Dad stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. How? He asked. By doing everything you said couldn't be done. By using technology instead of fighting it. By providing clients with transparency instead of asking them to trust us blindly. By treating our employees like professionals instead of treating them like laborers who should be grateful for whatever we give them. I sat back down. You know what the funny thing is, Dad? I learned all of this working for you. Every mistake Morrison and Sons made, every inefficiency, every client complaint. I was paying attention. I was learning what not to do. Dad was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What do you want?" I want you to admit you were wrong. I want you to acknowledge that I was tough enough to run the family business, and that your precious golden girl Kate isn't. Dad's silence told me everything I needed to know. Let me guess, I continued. Half the crew thinks she's an idiot. The other half doesn't respect her because they know she only got the job because she's your daughter. Suppliers don't trust her to make decisions because she doesn't understand the numbers. Clients are frustrated because she overpromises and underdelivers. It's been an adjustment period, Dad said weakly. An adjustment period? Dad, it's been 2 years. If Kate was going to figure it out, she would have by now. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. Want to see something interesting? This is a financial analysis I had my accountant run comparing Morrison and Sons' performance over the past 2 years versus the 2 years before that. The spreadsheet showed everything. Revenue down 35%. Profit margins compressed from 12% to 3%. Client retention rate dropped from 85% to 60%. Average project completion time increased by 20%. These aren't just bad numbers, Dad. They're catastrophic. Kate isn't just failing to grow the business. She's actively destroying it. Dad stared at the screen like it was showing him his own death certificate. Meanwhile, I continued, pulling up another spreadsheet, Pinnacle's numbers look like this. Revenue growth of 400% year over year. Profit margins of 18%. Client retention rate of 95%. Average project completion time, 15%. Faster than industry standard. I'm not just tough enough to run a construction business, Dad. I'm better at it than you ever were. That broke him. Dad put his head in his hands and started crying. I'd never seen him cry before, not even when his own father died. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. I felt a mix of satisfaction and pity watching him break down. This was what I'd wanted. Acknowledgement, vindication, proof that I'd been right all along. But seeing my father crying in my office didn't feel as good as I'd thought it would. It's too late for apologies, Dad. The damage is done. He looked up at me, tears still in his eyes. What can I do? How can I fix this? You can't. Morrison and Sons is finished. Even if you fired Kate tomorrow and begged your old clients to come back, they're not going to trust you again. You had your chance to do things right, and you chose favoritism over competence. Dad wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What's going to happen to the company? To Kate? I honestly don't care what happens to Kate. She made her bed when she went along with your plan to push me out. As for the company, I imagine you'll have to sell whatever assets you can and pay off your debts. If you're lucky, you might avoid personal bankruptcy. And then what? I'm 62 years old, Clara. This business is all I know. For a moment, I considered offering him a job. He was still a good construction supervisor, even if he was a terrible businessman. But then I remembered all the years of being told I wasn't tough enough, all the praise heaped on Kate while my contributions were ignored, all the hurt and anger that had driven me to this point. I guess you'll figure it out, I said. You're a smart guy. You'll adapt. Dad stood up slowly, like everything hurt. I guess I deserve this. You do, I said. But for what it's worth, I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to prove you wrong. He nodded and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, daughter, I'm proud of what you've built here. I should have seen it sooner. Yeah, I said. You should have. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. I'd gotten exactly what I wanted, proof that I was better than Kate, acknowledgement from Dad that he'd been wrong, and the satisfaction of watching Morrison and Sons fail. But I also felt empty, like I'd won a war that didn't really matter anymore. That was 3 months ago. Morrison and Sons filed for bankruptcy last month. Dad had to sell the company assets to pay off creditors. Kate is working for one of our competitors now, making about half what she used to make, and probably getting the respect she actually deserves. Dad calls me occasionally, asking if there's any work available at Pinnacle. I haven't hired him yet, but I'm thinking about it. He's a good supervisor when he's not trying to play favorites, and we're growing fast enough that we need experienced people. The ironic thing is, Kate called me last week. First time we'd spoken since I quit Morrison and Sons. Clara, she said, I want to apologize. I should have stood up for you with Dad. I knew you were better at the business side than me, but I was selfish and let him play favorites. Little late for that, don't you think? Yeah, probably, but I wanted you to know that you were right. I wasn't ready to run that company. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready to run a company. So what are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know. Maybe go back to school. Try to learn some of the stuff you tried to teach me. Maybe see if you'd be willing to hire me at Pinnacle. I laughed. You want to work for me? I want to learn how to do things right. And you're the only person I know who actually knows how to run a construction business. I haven't decided what to tell her yet. Part of me thinks it would be satisfying to have my golden girl sister working under me, maybe learning some humility. But part of me thinks it's better to just leave the past in the past. Right now, I'm focused on growing Pinnacle Construction Solutions. We're bidding on a $15 million hospital renovation project next month. The kind of job that Morrison and Sons never would have been qualified for, and exactly the kind of challenge that makes me excited to get up in the morning. Mom still invites me to family dinners, but the dynamic is completely different now. Instead of talking about Kate's latest achievements, everyone asks me about my business, my plans for expansion, my insights about the construction industry. It's weird being the successful daughter after years of being the disappointment, but I'll take it. The funniest part is that Dad's friends and business associates now introduce me as the one who really understands construction. Like they always knew I was the smart one instead of the girl who wasn't tough enough to run a construction company. I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes you have to burn everything down to prove you were right all along. It's not the most mature approach, but it sure as hell is satisfying. Update. Dad started working for me as a project supervisor 3 weeks ago. First day on the job, he pulled me aside and said, I want you to know that you're the boss here. No special treatment because I'm your father. If I screw up, fire me. So far, he's been great. Turns out when he's not trying to play favorites with his daughters, he's actually a decent manager. Who knew? Kate is still thinking about whether she wants to work for Pinnacle. I told her if she's serious, she needs to start at the bottom. General laborer. Maybe work her way up to crew chief if she proves herself. No shortcuts this time. We'll see if she's tough enough to swallow her pride and do the work.